V sat by her window, looking out at the sprawling Atlanta skyline, the city lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. The night was unusually quiet, and an odd feeling of nostalgia washed over her. She had been living in her cozy apartment for a few years now, building her life and career in marketing. But tonight, memories from her past tugged at her heart. Her mind drifted back to her childhood, a time when everything seemed simpler. And there was one particular memory that stood out: Cooper. Cooper wasn't just any dog. He was her dog, her protector, her companion. She hadn't seen him in years, not since she left home at 18 to start her new life. V had grown up in a small town just outside Atlanta, and Cooper had been her loyal friend since she was 12. But as life went on, she moved to the city, got busy with work, and eventually lost touch with her past, including Cooper. She had heard that Cooper had passed away a few years after she left. Her parents told her it was peaceful, that he had grown old, and that they buried him under his favorite tree in the backyard. V had cried then, feeling guilty for not being there in his final days. But life moved forward as it always does. But tonight, something felt different. There was a strange sense of warmth in the air, a feeling that took her back to the nights when she would fall asleep with Cooper curled up beside her, his soft fur against her skin, his steady breathing a comforting lullaby. As she sat there, lost in thought, she heard it, a faint scratching at her door. It was so subtle that at first, she thought it was her imagination. She listened again, and there it was. She stood up slowly, her heart pounding, unsure of what she would find on the other side. When she opened the door, her breath caught in her throat. Standing there, looking up at her with those familiar, soulful brown eyes, was Cooper. He was older now, his once vibrant golden fur streaked with gray, but it was him. She knelt down, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch him. His fur was soft, warm, and real. It was as if no time had passed at all. "Cooper?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Is it really you?" The dog wagged his tail slowly, stepping forward to nuzzle her hand. V's heart swelled with a mixture of disbelief, joy, and confusion. She hadn't seen him in years, and she knew that logically, he shouldn't be here. But somehow, in this moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was that he was here now, with her. She gently guided him inside and closed the door behind her. Cooper walked straight to her bedroom, just like he used to when he was younger, and hopped onto her bed. V followed him, sitting on the edge of the bed as she watched him settle down. He curled up in the exact spot where he had always slept, right beside where her pillow lay. V felt a rush of memories flood her mind. The nights when she had cried into his fur after a hard day at school, the times when she felt alone, and Cooper was the only one who seemed to understand. He had been there for her through everything, and now here he was again. But how? She wondered. Cooper had passed away. She knew that. So how could he be here, alive and well? The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. But at the same time, there was a strange sense of peace that washed over her. Perhaps this wasn't something she was meant to understand. Perhaps it was a gift. One last night with her beloved friend. V lay down beside him, just like she used to, her hand resting on his back as his breathing steadied. It felt like home. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe, like everything was going to be okay. The worries of the world, her career, the challenges of adulthood, they all melted away in this moment. As they lay there, V thought about how much Cooper had taught her, even in his absence. He had shown her the true meaning of loyalty and unconditional love. He had been there for her during some of the hardest moments of her life, and even though he wasn't physically there in recent years, the lessons he imparted stayed with her. V drifted off to sleep, feeling comforted by Cooper's presence. That night, she dreamed of their adventures together, running through fields, playing fetch, and the simple joy of being in each other's company. It was as if the years melted away, and they were both young again, carefree and full of life. The next morning, V woke up slowly, the sunlight streaming through her window. She stretched out her hand, expecting to feel Cooper beside her, but the bed was empty. Her heart skipped a beat as she sat up quickly, looking around the room. Cooper was gone. She felt a pang of sadness. But at the same time, she knew in her heart that this was how it was meant to be. He had come back to her, if only for a night, to remind her of the bond they shared and the strength she carried with her because of him. As she got up and went about her day, Vi felt different, lighter, more at peace. The weight of the world didn't seem so heavy anymore. Cooper's presence, even for just that one night, had reminded her of the importance of love, loyalty, and living in the moment. Over the next few weeks, Vi found herself reflecting more on the simple things in life. She started taking more time for herself, stepping away from the constant hustle and grind of her job. She reached out to old friends and reconnected with her family. And every now and then she would pause, close her eyes, and remember the warmth of Cooper's fur, the sound of his breathing beside her, and the love that had never really left her. Vi began to realize that Cooper's return wasn't just about comfort. It was about reminding her of the lessons she had forgotten. In the fast-paced world she lived in, she had lost sight of the things that truly mattered. Cooper had come back to show her that love, loyalty, and connection were the things that gave life its true meaning. She shared her experience with a close friend, explaining the strange but beautiful night when Cooper had come back to her. At first, her friend was skeptical, but as Vi spoke, her friend's eyes softened, understanding that this was more than just a story about a dog. It was about love that transcends time and space, and the power of memories that stay with us long after those we love are gone. Vi smiled, thinking about the last words she had whispered to Cooper before drifting off to sleep that night. "Thank you for always being there for me." In the end, Cooper's return wasn't something she could explain or fully understand, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the love they shared and the way it continued to shape her life, even years after he was gone. And so, as Vi walked through the streets of Atlanta, her heart full, she knew that Cooper would always be with her, guiding her, reminding her of what truly matters in life: the people and animals we love, the bonds we create, and the memories that last a lifetime. That was Cooper's gift to her, a reminder that love never really dies. It stays with us, always. As Vi went about her life, she couldn't shake the feeling that Cooper had come back to her for a reason. There was something deeper about his visit, something more than just comfort. The bond they shared was still present, almost as if he was watching over her, guiding her even in his absence. It filled her with both curiosity and warmth. Weeks passed, and while Vi's career continued to demand her attention, she started to make time for the things she had long neglected. She took walks around her neighborhood, reconnecting with nature, and enjoying the small joys that once meant everything to her. She began volunteering at the local animal shelter, offering her time and love to dogs that reminded her of Cooper, loyal, trusting, and in need of a friend. One evening, as Vi was heading to the shelter for her weekly volunteer shift, she felt an inexplicable tug at her heart. The shelter was always a bittersweet place for her. While she loved spending time with the animals, there was always a sense of sadness for those who had been abandoned or mistreated. But this night felt different. As she entered the shelter, the familiar sounds of barking and paws scratching against cages filled the air. Vi greeted the staff and made her way toward the back, where the older dogs were kept, her favorite group to spend time with. She had a special place in her heart for the dogs who, like Cooper, were often overlooked because of their age. But as she walked through the rows of kennels, something caught her attention. In the last cage on the left, curled up in a small ball, was a golden retriever with fur streaked in gray, much like Cooper had been in his final years. The dog looked up at Vi, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Vi's heart skipped a beat. There was something about this dog, something familiar. She walked closer, kneeling down by the cage and reaching out her hand. The dog slowly lifted his head and moved toward her, sniffing her hand before resting his chin on her palm. She gasped softly, feeling a strange sense of connection. It was as if Cooper's spirit was right there in front of her. The dog's eyes held the same warmth, the same loyalty she had known for years. "What's his name?" Vi asked one of the shelter workers who had approached. "That's Chance," the worker replied. "He's been here for a while now. Older dogs like him don't get adopted as quickly. People usually want puppies." V nodded, her heart aching for Chance. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just coincidence. The connection she felt with him was too strong, too real. It was as if Cooper had somehow led her here, to this moment, to this dog. That night, after her shift, V couldn't stop thinking about Chance. The way he had looked at her, the way he had rested his head in her hand. It reminded her so much of the bond she had shared with Cooper. As she lay in bed, she thought about all the nights she had spent with Cooper by her side, comforting her, protecting her. She realized that perhaps it was her turn to do the same for Chance. The next morning, V made her decision. She returned to the shelter and adopted Chance, bringing him home with her. As they walked through the door of her apartment, Chance hesitated for a moment, looking around as if to get his bearings. Then, much like Cooper had done all those years ago, Chance walked straight to her bedroom and curled up on the bed. V smiled, tears brimming in her eyes as she watched him settle in. It was as if he had always belonged there, just like Cooper had. Over the next few weeks, V and Chance developed a bond that reminded her so much of the one she had shared with Cooper. Chance wasn't a replacement. No dog could ever replace Cooper. But he filled a void in her heart that she hadn't realized was still there. He was gentle, loyal, and seemed to understand her in a way that few others could. One evening, as V sat on the couch with Chance resting his head on her lap, she thought back to the night Cooper had come to her. She still didn't fully understand how it had happened, whether it was a dream, a vision, or something else entirely. But she knew that it had changed her. It had reminded her of the importance of love, loyalty, and the bonds we share with those we care about, whether they are human or animal. Chance was a new chapter in her life, but he was also a continuation of the lessons Cooper had taught her. He reminded her that love was never lost, that it lived on in the connections we made and the lives we touched. And in that moment, with Chance beside her, V felt a deep sense of peace. Months passed, and as V's life continued to evolve, she found herself reflecting on the journey she had been on. The visit from Cooper had set something in motion, something she couldn't quite explain, but felt deeply. It had reignited her passion for living a life full of purpose, compassion, and connection. And with Chance by her side, she knew that the lessons Cooper had taught her would continue to shape her future. One day, while walking with Chance through a quiet park near her home, V saw a young girl sitting alone on a bench, her head hung low. The girl looked up as they approached, and V noticed the sadness in her eyes. Without thinking, Chance walked up to the girl and rested his head on her lap, much like he did with V when she was feeling down. The girl smiled, her hand gently stroking Chance's fur. V sat down beside her, offering a kind smile. "That's Chance," V said softly. "He seems to have a way of knowing when people need a little comfort." The girl nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I miss my dog," she whispered. "He passed away a few months ago, and I just feel so lost without him." V's heart ached for the girl. She knew that feeling all too well. "I understand," she said gently. "I lost my dog a few years ago, too. His name was Cooper, and he meant the world to me." The girl looked up at V, her eyes filled with curiosity. "How did you get through it?" she asked. V smiled softly, looking down at Chance, who was still resting his head on the girl's lap. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, "but I realized that the love we share with our dogs never really goes away. It stays with us, in our hearts, and in the memories we keep. And sometimes, if we're lucky, life gives us a chance to love again." The girl smiled, wiping away a tear. "Thank you," she whispered, her hand still stroking Chance's fur. As V and Chance continued their walk through the park, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. Cooper had come back to her, if only for a night, to remind her of the love they shared, and to guide her toward a new beginning with Chance. And now that love was spreading, touching the lives of others who needed it. In the end, V realized that Cooper's visit had been more than just a reunion. It had been a gift, a reminder that love never truly dies. It lives on in the bonds we create, in the lives we touch, and in the memories we carry with us. And as she walked hand in hand with Chance, Vi knew that Cooper would always be with her, guiding her, reminding her that love, loyalty, and kindness were the greatest gifts of all.